Hello, Internet. Wow. Now that that's out of the way, this is our modded Minecraft server. So we're using Valhelsia 3 as our mod pack right now. And as you can see, we've been playing for a bit, but I decided starting the series is better late than never. So I'm just gonna use this episode to catch you guys up to speed, and then I'll do some uploads later on, maybe some streams as well. So let's start with my base. So stepping in, not much. I have my red bed, of course. A chest with some miscellaneous stuff that I couldn't be bothered to put away. And a cutting board so I can make
hamburger.
But when you step through here, there's a lot more stuff. It's where the magic happens, per se. I got a blast furnace and a smoker, so I can smelt some stuff quickly. I also have an array of furnaces, just four, so I can smelt blocks and stuff when I need glass and whatnot. My electrolytic separator is to make hydrogen for my jetpack. This charger is to level up these infinity tools. This right here is to make stuff for the Power mod, which I'm currently working on a project for that, so I had to make more of these rods. Fun. This right here is just to hold biofuel, make it the bioreactor, used to power these tools. They're a pain, but they're really good, so it's worth it. I got a fluid extractor. I have that hooked up to this tank right here that I just fill with latex. I also have a latex processing unit to make rubber, but I have it going there for now, because if I make anything that needs latex, I want to be able to just grab it out of the tank. Right here's my ME storage system. I have 85 kilobytes of storage. That's a 1 kilobyte, a 4 kilobyte, a 16 kilobyte, and a 64 kilobyte disk. I was running low on storage, especially because I was holding all my crops in chests outside. I'll show my farm in a moment. And I wanted to put the crops in the ME storage system. So I made the 64 kilobyte drive, because putting them in here would put me over what I previously had, which was around like 25 kilobytes. As you could tell, definitely over that. And now I got plenty of headroom. Over here, this dissolution chamber is just used to make some fancy stuff like these things. The crusher, I crush up metals in it, used to make alloys. The metallurgic infuser, I also use it to make some alloys. This is how I make my steel. That's just a rail worker's bench. It's just a more efficient way of making rails. I have some lava here for some recipes that use it. Engineer's workbench I don't use much anymore, but it's very helpful for the immersive engineering mod. And that's just about everything inside. But where it gets even better is when you go outside. So up here, I have mostly generators. So I have two thermoelectric generators here, and these both power that electrolytic separator because it just chugs power. It's crazy. These three power almost every machine in the base, and this reactor powers really just the charger. I also have it set up to those rods as well, because those use a lot of power, but it's really just for the charger. And that's just because, I mean, you kind of need quintillion of charge, quintillion RF worth of charge to level these up, so yeah. The project I was working on that I mentioned earlier is making a better reactor. And it's taking some time, but it's coming along nicely. If you come along this way, you can see I have a coke oven, an alloy kiln. I don't really use this anymore. I have the crusher and whatnot that I use to make alloys with. I have some creosote oil that was made by this that I just kind of keep off to the side in case I need it. Come over here. Just some infinite water sources. Underneath here, though, there is a block destroyer, and that just grabs water from the infinite water source. Not this one, but there's one under the base that pumps water to all the machines in here, at least the ones that use water, because the ones that do use water use a lot of it, and it's a pain to try and carry it over in buckets. So, got it all automated because I'm cool like that. Yeah. Over here is my millstone. Use this when I make gunpowder. It's hooked to this water wheel that turns it. This crucible here is also used for making gunpowder. I don't really use much gunpowder anymore, but when I did use a lot of it, this was very helpful. You can see these are from different mods, and it's because I found a very creative solution to making gunpowder that made it quite cheap. And I was able to just mass produce gunpowder, which was very nice. Now over here I have my farm, and this is fully automated. I'm going to show you how that system works in a moment. We have potatoes, wheat, onion, tomatoes, and cabbages. And the way this works is I have this like long row of harvesters on just planks in a chest that hold the crops. You can see right now it's not moving, and the reason for this is because there's stuff in the chest. So the chest is being emptied out into the storage system, and while there's stuff in the chest as it sits here, the comparator notices that there are items in the chest, sends a signal to this repeater, which goes into this repeater, and you can see it's locking it. And now that it's not locking it because the chest is empty, it allows the signal here to change. So it was locking whatever signal this was outputting before, and it was keeping it the same. And now that that's done, and there's no longer a signal locking this, it was able to turn off, and this gear shift was able to change direction, and now it's going back to collect more crops. Now the way it knows to change direction is with these observers. So the way this shaft works is that it acts as almost like an entity, not quite, but it's about as close of an analogy as I can get while it moves. So that's how it's not breaking any crops, is that as it moves, it's not a physical object per se. And so when it stops, it becomes a physical object, and the observers see that. So that's why I don't have to have it at the end, I just have to have it on the opposite side of the gear shift. So I could have this closer if I wanted to. I might put it this far away. It doesn't really matter. And so what I have here, this repeater goes into this latch. And the reason I have the latch is because this observer, it's going to see it stop once it gets to the end here. And when it does see it stop, it's going to send a signal that's going to try and change the direction of this. But if you remember this locking mechanism from earlier, it's not going to change. So the reason we have it set up like this is because if we didn't have this latch here, what would happen is when this starts moving again, the observer would send another signal, and it would change the direction again, and it would be a mess, because then it would go forward, and the observer would tell it to go back, and then it'd stop, and it'd tell it to go forward, and then, because it would immediately go forward after that, this pulse extender would make sure that the second pulse doesn't go through. But because there's such a long delay, this latch makes it so it sees it once, it turns on, it sees it again, it turns off. And that way it's just one on-off signal instead of on-off, 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 on-off. On this side, though, we don't have that same problem. So I'm able to just hook it up to a pulse extender. So when it stops at the end, it sees it, tells it to go back. It immediately sees that this disappears, because when it moves, it becomes invisible. And it sends another pulse, but the pulse is still going on here because it's being extended, so nothing happens. So that's how that works. And then this latch is just so the signal comes in, it doesn't have to stay on here. It turns the pulse into a solid on or off signal. So you can see it's off here. And when the pulse comes back, which you're going to see in a moment, pulse is going to come back and it's going to go on. And now that this is off, this is still on, which is important because this needs to be powered in order to go backwards. That's how my base works. Of course. You may have noticed that there's some stuff over here. This isn't anything too special. I have another thermoelectric generator, which powers all this stuff that I don't really use anymore. I used it to make fuel for a tool that I don't use anymore because this drill replaced it. But it kind of looks cool, so I don't want to take it down. It also powers this mob slaughter factory, which kind of sounds a bit excessive, but it basically turns my heifers over here into pink slime, which I can use to make cool stuff like this. So the occasional heifer has to be sacrificed, but considering I'm already using them for a hamburger farm, I consider it worth it. Now, this is not my base, but this is the other most active player on this server, so I only found it proper that I would show this off. So, as you can tell, it's got a lot going on here. Now, he doesn't actually have any indoors like my base. Nothing's really closed in. So you can see all the stuff here is out in the open, which, as long as no one's going to mess with it, then it works out fine, I guess. He's invested a lot in create. So as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3 create windmills, as well as these 2, but these are just for power. These aren't from create. So what this one's for, right now it's locked, but normally if you turn it on, this spins around and harvests the crops. However, I think the crop harvesters are gone, so it would just destroy the crops if it were to stop on them. And it looks like he has melon set up anyway, so I don't think this is really used anymore. So that's a little anticlimactic. But over here, we have a lot of stuff going on. So this is used to automate a lot of stuff he uses for Botania. I don't really understand all of it. I really don't understand all of it. But pretty neat. The one I do understand is this one over here. This one's used to power his fully automated bread factory. So his farm, unfortunately, is not automated like mine. So this piston has to be sent manually down and back. But what is automated is the bread making process. So what happens is wheat falls down here, it gets crushed into flour, gets sent in here, where it's washed into dough, and it gets over here, where it's fired into bread. And it goes into here, and as you can see, it makes a lot of bread. And the reason he has this setup instead of just a furnace is this triples the bread output. So instead of getting 1 piece of bread for every 3 pieces of wheat, he gets a piece of bread for every piece of wheat. So he has a lot of bread. And we use that in tandem with my farm to make
hamburger,
which is like the best food in the game. We haven't done comprehensive research on that, but trust me, it is. Now, if you see, it also goes over here, which this is also another farm of his. There's actually going right now. This one I haven't paid attention too much. I don't entirely know how it works. So this plant gatherer collects these crops. And when you go down here, it also has a similar setup for sugarcane. And they all get sent here. Now, whether or not this goes to the bread factory, I'm unaware. I'm not entirely sure about the setup. Again, it's not my base. But considering that this is the other most active member on the server, I found it important that you guys at least see it and know that, well, my base is right there, so yeah. He has not invested in the power mod, though, so he doesn't have a nuclear reactor. He just made a ton of thermoelectric generators. So, yeah. Interesting setup. I don't know if he has this set up properly, but I don't have the heart to tell him if it's not or not, so I've just left him to that. So that's how the modded server is going on right now. There are some other bases that some other players have, but they're far more inactive, so they're not as prevalent as me and the player's base that's over there. So, if you guys are interested, keep watching, I guess. I'm going to record more of this regardless, so I look forward to sharing our adventures with you. And it broke crops again, so I'm gonna go deal with that. See ya.